I think utilities have gone a long way. All this investment that they've done in the past 10, 15 years. I think now they give a lot of data, but they were all done in silos. So I think now there is a better understanding on, we need to do something about this. What do we do with all this data that we have and how we use all that?
I started my career as a water engineer. So that was the first thing I saw straight off college, but then when I started looking at other sectors, I realized that it's about 10, 15 years behind in terms of adoption of these new technologies, right? But now we see that they're catching up. They're catching up very, very fast.
So in my experience, the utility size is obviously a very, very important factor, especially when we're looking at the adoption of digital technologies. But it's not the only one. I've seen smaller utilities that are very progressive, and it depends on a lot of having an internal champion that understands the value of that. Is that something that you've seen too out there?
Yes, of course. There's small utilities that are incredibly digital, and there's large utilities that are in the 60s, right? But at the end of the day, as you're saying, the matter is if there's a champion in the utility that wants to change things and wants to push change, that facilitates things. However, I do think that funding is a bigger issue for the smaller utilities. And especially as they are public utilities that need get public funding from the government or from state or local authorities. The smaller the utilities, normally the biggest the funding gap is, and that's where I think companies like us can help them bridge that gap with technology, right? Sometimes.
Yeah, because they need to make choices at the end of the day with the pool of money and resources that they have. I think in my experience at least, the digital transformation, we focus a lot on the digital side and the digital term, but there is that transformation word there, and transformation is not just technology, right? We're talking is the people, the processes, the technology. So it all starts with priorities. Where you look at what are your plans, where do you want to go, what do you have today, and figuring that out is step number one. You need to figure out the journey.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's I think the most important thing when you start your digital journey is to always keep in mind that digital it's not a means to an end. It doesn't end in itself, right? You're not just doing digital because you want to be digital. You're doing digital as something that's going to support your business, your operations, your revenues, your cost reduction strategies, the way that your people are working, and you need to keep that in mind always. It's at the end of the day, it's something that's going to support you as an organization do things better. That's number one. And then number two, digital, it's a way to bring, in a way, a big dimension of digital is bringing data, right? Bringing more and more data and using it to make better decisions, right? So for that, you need to start thinking about, okay, if I want to bring data, where do I need that data to come from in the first place, right? So that's a big thing. And for that, you need to start thinking about, obviously, in a utility, you have assets, right? That's the thing that you invest in assets, and those assets are used basically to produce, to distribute, to treat water. So you need to know where to place those data generation devices or hardware that's at the end of the day sensors that are going to help you make better decisions in the long run.
It's important to understand that in order to get there, we have to go through the steps that you're talking about. And that's, it sounds obvious, but I've seen it time and time again that doesn't necessarily happen in a lot of cases. A lot of companies jump in looking at technology, but they need to take a step back and figure out first what's that starting point.
Cybersecurity is something that it's a key requirement that any digital roadmap is going to have as a key component. It's at the end of the day, before digital was a thing, you had, I mean, if you're producing water in a plant, that plant needs to have a fence so that people don't jump in the plant, right? So this is the same. You're protecting from the outer world with mechanisms that doesn't allow other people to attack your infrastructure.
Is that balance between security and the use of all that data, and it's, I would say, is just another requirement that technology needs to comply with. And the good thing is, like, more and more there are certifications out there that, you know, if you comply with, you prove that you're following those standards. So there are better ways now to follow those rules than there were a few years ago.
It's a good thing that when you look at the end, organizations, professional organizations and authorities like AWWA, EPA, right? They've caught up in standardizing a lot of these cybersecurity requirements. Yep. And we are in an engineering industry. We need standards for things because we are providing water, drinking water to people. And if we don't have standards, it's really hard to make sure that utilities adopt something, right? Obviously, pipe manufacturing have standards, pipe installation have standards, equipment have standards. And I think cybersecurity and digital tools is something that for a time it was missing, or it was lacking some kind of standardization. But these kind of organizations have done a great job in catching up and making sure that there's at least a set of standards that companies like us can follow to show utilities that, look, we are complying with these standards and you'll be okay working with us and you'll be safe.
Sometimes what I hear out there is, the platform as a big change, a big piece of technology that goes into utilities and so on. But what I've seen and experience that I've had is that that's not necessarily the case. It can be something that it should be something that is deployed gradually.
Yes, you're totally right that you can start with smaller things that could incrementally help you, and then finally, as you get more funding and more benefits, get to a point in which you can fully deploy something more complex and more advanced.
I think that's a key message to tell all our existing clients and future clients that digital, at least what I've seen out there, sometimes is seen as something like has to be like sophisticated or is complex to implement and all that, and that's not necessarily true. It depends on where you started, what you have today, and what those priorities are. And in some cases, it's starting with what I've seen, basic visualization of what you have today. There are a lot of aha moments that then it's like, oh, now I know what's happening here. Let me invest into the next thing to make it better. But that starting point doesn't have to be very, very complex.
Exactly. We're not doing something different from what they're doing already. We're just giving them tools to make what they're doing, make it easier and faster and more visual. But at the end of the day, utilities are the ones that have all the knowledge and know how to do things much better than we do.
We can help everybody to get an affordable, secure service, and using the digital technologies that we bring to the table. I think that's the end game, is being able to give everybody that service.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.